George, again, thank you so much for being with us. Thanks to the students who are here. We're going to have a couple more join us here in just a little bit. But I wanted to bring in George Grande. As I mentioned, he was one of the pioneers at Sports Center. You know, we take Sports Center for granted. It's on all the time, every night, throughout the weekend. But this was a turning point in what ESPN was doing. And if you've read the book, you know that ESPN started out a couple of trailers in the back and mud and cables running through the puddles and all that stuff. But Sports Center was really the first time where someone treated sports as news. Someone treated it like CNN, only it was sports. And it was revolutionary at the time. Nobody was doing that, but it was an idea that came out of the folks who started ESPN, who mostly were print. They were either newspaper or magazine sports editors and writers, and so they had an idea of what news would look like in sports. So George, I know that you have seen this a million times, but you know what? Can't get enough of looking at what this looked like way back when.
Oh, geez.
Here's another innovation on ESPN, and it's going to be a big part of our future. The Sports Center with George Grande. He'll have the latest on what's happening all around. George?
Thanks, Lee, and welcome everyone to the ESPN Sports Center. From this very desk in the coming weeks and months, we'll be filling you in on the pulse of sporting activity, not only around the country, but around the world as well. If it takes an interview, we'll do it. If it takes play-by-play, we'll do it. If it takes commentary, we'll do that too. That's the way we'll function from the ESPN Sports Center, and we'll be filling you in on further updates as the broadcast progresses.
How about that?
Who's that guy? That was a crazy night.
What was going through your head that night? Did you have
That
any?
was it was it was crazy because I mean, to give you a little background, and hopefully someday you guys will be able to see the film that it just produced on Bill Rasmussen, the founder of ESPN, which really tells the background story to everything that occurred in the weeks and months prior to ESPN. But I was at CBS at the time, and Lee Leonard, the guy you saw there, was in New York working for WOR. And when ESPN went on the air September 7th of 79, Bill Rasmussen, the founder of ESPN, made a deal to bring Chet Simmons and Scotty Connell from NBC to ESPN. And Scotty and I had worked together. I did the pre and post game shows to the New York Football Giants on CBS, and they wanted Jim Simpson to come and do the first show, but NBC wouldn't let Jim Simpson out of his contract. So Scotty calls me and said, George, look, can you come up and, just do the first weekend so we can get on the air? And I know you're at CBS, see if you can get out of it and come down. So I talked to the fellow that was in charge of CBS News and Sports. And I said, I want to do a little freelance work. Is it okay? He said, sure, it's okay. So I agreed to do it. And he said, by the way, do you know anybody else that can come up and do the first weekend with us? And he said, I'm talking to 2 or 3 guys, and Lee Leonard was one of them. So the fellow you just saw there, Lee Leonard, decided to come. He calls me up. He says, George, what are you doing? You're going up there? I said, yeah, I'm going up to do the first show. Come on, we'll have some fun. So I picked, Lee was in New York. He didn't have a car. He took a train in. I picked him up. We drove to ESPN. And at that time, the building was up. There was no glass on the windows. The only thing functional at ESPN was the set we were sitting on. Everything else came out of trailers that were in the back. And it had rained. There was mud all over the place. And we're driving up to the building with big satellite dishes out in front. And Lee, who's a New Yorker through and through, is sitting in my car next to me. And all of a sudden, he's got a pale look on his face. He looks at me. He says, Georgie, what the blank did you get me involved in here? Yeah, it was that chaotic. So we got in. We got in the day before. We had scheduled the first show, 7 o'clock on Friday night. And the end result of a very frenetic day, we had scheduled to have Chuck Fairbanks, who was the coach, football coach, Bear Bryant, and Bill Flynn, who was the NCAA president. Well, the first two interviews we couldn't get. We just couldn't tape them, couldn't get them in. We did get Bill Flynn. He came in. That worked out fine. So the guy who was the producer of the show, they brought in from CBS. I'm in my ear. We're getting ready to go on the air. And the last thing I hear was, George, I don't know what we got here. We got a half-hour show. Good luck. I'm leaving the truck. Anyways, it was an ad-lib crazy day. But as Betsy was saying, the bottom line was this had never been done before. All of us that came from some from local television, some from the network, and if you were involved in sports, you had a dream that maybe someday, someplace, we get more sports than just 2 minutes a night on local TV, or on weekends, you got what ABC, NBC, and CBS gave you in terms of events, but you never had sports news covered during the day. Very little did you ever have. So most of us that came with the idea of, we didn't know whether this would last 3 weeks, 3 months, 30 years, whatever, but we knew it would be something pretty special. And the beauty of all of this, and I'm sure you guys, I know some of you are athletes, some of you are already working in journalistic endeavors. It's the people you work with that make all this worthwhile. And we still have friendships. We have a reunion almost every year, and many of us get together 2 or 3 times a year. We have people that met there, got married there. Now they have kids that have kids. That's the beauty of the ESPN story. It was something that no one ever thought would succeed, but what it did, it brought a whole lot of people together, and each one of us had a pretty special experience. So, it was unique. We didn't know whether we'd survive or not. Getty Oil was our benefactor at that time, and they lost $20 million a year the first 3 years, or else we never would have made it. That was in the era when the oil companies were looking for ways to lose money. They were looking for write-offs, but so it was pretty special. And Betsy's an alum. She knows the feeling that was there and the emotion that was there. It still reverberates today in terms of the people involved more than anything else.
Oh yeah, you're right. And you do have, friends forever, because you're kind of like, you're in Bristol, Connecticut, you're kind of by yourself, you kind of hunker down. You all have to get along because there's nobody else. I mean, it's a small town. Most everybody comes from somewhere else. And so, you have this bunker mentality. It's us against the world, and you do get those friendships. But George, before we start talking a little bit more about your career, I want to have you talk a little more about your background. You are, like so many of the students, you were a student athlete, and you were able to turn your sport into your profession. And so many of the students here want to do that exact same thing. When did it occur to you that, hey, playing baseball, hey, maybe I can make something out of this once I graduate? When did that occur to you? And when did you really start preparing for the idea that, okay, I could get into broadcasting, still be involved in baseball, which obviously was a sport that you loved?
Yeah, I think it may have been 50 years ago that I was going through what you guys are going through now, but believe me, the emotions, the feelings, the goals are the same that I had then that you have now. I came from Connecticut. I went to USC, the University of Southern California, because it was the #1 baseball school in the country, and I wanted to play professional baseball. I figured if I went there and I could play there, I have a pretty good chance. And I had my 4 years there were remarkable for a lot of reasons. Rod Dato, the baseball coach, won 11 national championships, one while I was there. was a mentor for me my whole life. And many of the friendships that I made there, those of you that know baseball, Vin Scully was a broadcaster for the Dodgers, the best that's ever done baseball. I became a gopher for him. At USC, we played an exhibition game every year in January against the Dodgers at Dodger Stadium. For them, it was a photo day. For us, it was kind of neat. And I'm out at shortstop getting ground balls, and Rod Dedeaux whistles for me to come in. He said, Vin Scully's standing next to him by the batting cage. He says, Vin, this young man's interested in broadcasting. And Vin says, well, have him give me a call. So I called him, and he did the games back then on radio with Jerry Doggett. And for 4 years, whenever I could get there, I was a gopher. I mean, now you call them internships. Back then, we were just gophers. You know, you ripped the wires, you swept up the booth, you got them coffee or tea or whatever. But you watched the best that ever did baseball do his craft. And even more importantly than the fact he was the best that did baseball, he was a remarkable human being. And we were friends up until the day he died. And so while I went there to play baseball, and as all of us figure, whether you're a basketball, baseball, football, lacrosse, volleyball, whatever, at some point in time, you know, the reality of who you are, what you are. We're all great in high school. All of a sudden, I remember my first day at USC for baseball, there were 12 of us that were on scholarship. 4 were pitchers, so there are 8 of us. And Rod Dedeaux talks to us, gives a pep talk, says, okay, Tigers, go out to your position. All 8 of us started to walk out towards shortstop because he recruited the best athletes, and then he decided where he'd put them. So you knew right away that you were coming up against some pretty good competition. And for me, I realized I was there for 4 years. I had a great experience. We won the national championship in '68. Had, teammates like Tom Seaver behind me over here, Billy Lee, Brent Strom, Steve Busby, Hall of Fame caliber pitchers, some great players too. And I realized that I'm not as good as some of these guys. So you begin to think, okay, what's the next step? I work for the campus radio station. I work for the student newspaper, just like you guys are doing. And I believe me, I talk to so many young people that come to me, and I just met with somebody a few weeks ago here that is a junior now in college. I met with him 3 years ago, and he was interested in getting into broadcasting. I said, well, what you got to do, you got a great opportunity, because we have student newspapers and campus TV and radio operations now that we didn't have a lot of when I was in school. Take advantage of that. Do everything you can, because you make all your mistakes. You learn what to do, what not to do, just like in sports. The more you do, the better you're going to be at whatever you're doing. And we met 3 years ago, and we met again. And I asked him, I said, so what have you been doing? Did you work for the campus newspaper? No. Did you work for the student TV station? No. And here it is 3 years later, where he could have done all those things. And you can lead a horse to water, you can't make a horse drink. And all I can say is you guys are already a step ahead, because you're doing things that you need to do to experiment, to try to see who you are, what you are. I can't tell you how many students I've had, and I taught at the University of Connecticut, that came in, they said, I want to be a broadcaster. And little by little, as we went through the year, just 1 year of a class, I would have them, or a couple of years, they began to realize, no, I really don't, I enjoy producing, or I enjoy directing more than being on the air. You don't figure that out unless you do it, unless you try it. And I think the great thing is, Betsy's told me about some of you and the work that you're doing on campus. That's great. And internships are important as you can get them in the summertime. That's critical, because you not only do you find out about the business, and our business is, yes, performance, but it's also contacts. You work at a local radio station, a local television station, a cable operation. You begin to meet people. And I tell you, I 50 years later, I still cross paths with people who will say, you know, this person applied for a job and they said that they worked for you as an intern back with the Reds and 5 years ago. What kind of a person was he or she? And that's the way your career is going to be written, not just by what you do, but how you conduct yourself. How hard of a worker are you? Are you a good teammate? Do you make your operation better? Do you help people around you? Those are the things that are more critical. When we started ESPN and I was a senior announcer and I hired people, I didn't necessarily look for people who had been on the air a lot. I looked for people, many of them, I'd look at their resume. I say, are they athletes? You know, did they play a sport? Were they a good teammate? And if I knew somebody that might have been a coach or might have been somebody that worked for the student newspaper, I'd call them. That recommendation was critical because you want good people that want to work, that want to make their operation better. So when we look at where we are today, and 50 years later, I look back on it, the things that you guys are doing, they're the things that you need to do to be successful. And you'll find your way. You'll understand what you really do like to do. You may think, I want to be on the air. But all of a sudden you say, you know, maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe I want to do this. Or maybe I want to go in this. Like Yogi Berra said, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. You know, you don't know where that fork in the road is going to be, but always be ready for it.
Very true. So you talked about being at Channel 8 in New Haven, and that's the kind of station that you could be there for 30 years. You could make a career out of it just being there. Well, what took you to play-by-play? Because you were able to do play-by-play for, you know, some iconic franchises like the Yankees, like St. Louis, and then spent almost 20 years here in Cincinnati with the Reds. So how did you make that change from working at the television station and making that jump into play-by-play?
I really started in radio at the campus station at USC, where we did football, basketball, baseball. When I went into professional broadcasting after I left USC, I did news, sports, sales, producing. You did everything. And again, that's a reason to try anything you can try. And my goal was always, when I couldn't be a professional baseball player, I wanted to be a professional baseball broadcaster. And so early in my career, that was clearly a goal for me. And, you know, we did in high school sports, I did football, basketball, hockey. We did a Yale game of the week, which sometimes was racquetball, sometimes was crew. So you experienced everything and anything. And the more you did, hopefully the better you got. But for me, I was always a play-by-play person. You got to television with the idea that maybe someday up the road, you'd be able to do play-by-play. But, you know, I'm a great believer that the journey is more important than the destination, that the things you do day in and day out, the people that you're with, the opportunity to experience athletics, sports, teamwork, those are the things that really ring true day in and day out. And the things that when you look back on your career, you'll have the greatest memories of, not what position you held or how many awards you got or how much money you made. It was who you were with, and it was what you did, and the opportunity to be part of a team. And those are the things that more than anything dictated my career. When I was at Channel 8, I started in sports, and then I became the news anchor. And I realized after a couple of years, this really isn't what I wanted. And Bets, you've seen the same thing. Excuse me. When you were locally in Cincinnati, you had the opportunity to do the same thing. And you try it, and then you realize, just like the bean counters are in charge of sports, or even more in charge of news. And I realized I wanted to be back with the sports side of it. So, but you know, it like I said, the Yogi Berra line really rings true. You know, you never know what's going to happen in your career, what opportunities might come, what opportunities might disappear. Just do it. My mom and dad always told me, work hard, have fun, and good things will happen. And that's the way I've kind of lived my life. You work hard, have fun at what you're doing every day, whether it's this class whether it's working for, your student newspaper or your television operation on campus, or whatever internship you have during the summer. That'll lead you to where you want to go. Don't worry about the next step. Worry about this step. Do the best you can at what you're doing. And little by little, you begin to get a feel for what you really want to do.
And your love of baseball really has continued throughout your career. You were involved Cooperstown for so many years for the induction ceremonies at Cooperstown. You're part of USA Baseball. You got your shirt on there. Why? I mean, you don't have to do this. You can sit at home and eat bonbons and mow your grass, and and everything would be fine. Why do you continue? We all have to mow the grass. Well, why do you think it's important for you to give back to baseball all these years?
I think we hopefully do what we like to do, and that doesn't end with a job or a profession. I know that the work I do, I'm on the board of directors of USA Baseball, and in fact, I have a Zoom call this afternoon. We're just bringing in our interns for the summer, and it's one of the most exciting times because we bring in about 20 people from around the country. Many of them, like you guys, are involved in sports in college and are looking for summer internships. Some of them we end up hiring, but we're not a big organization, so we don't have a lot of slots. But the opportunity to work with young people that are excited about sports, athletics, the profession, in different venues. Sometimes it's about activities on the field. Sometimes it's about public relations. Sometimes it's about the business side. And little by little, as we talk about, a lot of these young men and women begin to see these are the kind of things that I'm interested in. I've had a lot of people that we've had come through USA Baseball. Same thing with the Reds, and Betsy, too, when you've had interns over the years, you can see that this person really is something special. There's something about this person that they're going to be a success. And I've told so many people, I don't know whether you're going to be a success in broadcasting, but you're going to be a success in life because of the way you handle yourself. I'll give you one little story that really, it coalesced everything for me early in my career. When I went to USC, Rod Dedeaux knew all the major leaguers, coaches, managers. Sparky Anderson was his bat boy at one time. Sparky became a Hall of Fame manager. Tommy Lasorda was his best friend. And the year we won, my sophomore year, Rod Dedeaux brought in Bobby Richardson. Some of you probably don't remember who he was. He was a second baseman for the Yankees. And he was Hall of Fame caliber. Didn't make the Hall of Fame, but Hall of Fame caliber. Their second baseman for so many years. And he had a great faith and a great belief in life. And he came in, and I was his shortstop. And, we talked about the double play, talked about this, talked about that. Then he got our team together, and he gave us a little bit of a pep talk. And he looked at all of us, and most of the kids who came to USC wanted to play Major League Baseball. And he said, okay, how many of you young men want to make it to the Baseball Hall of Fame? And everybody puts their hands up, most everybody. Sure, I'd love to make it to the Baseball Hall of Fame. And he looked at us and he said, I wish for you a career that might get you to the Baseball Hall of Fame. But more importantly, what I wish for you is that you'll make God's Hall of Fame. And all of a sudden, boom, it's like being slapped in the face. He said, what I want for you is to be the best person you could be at whatever you end up doing. That means be the best son, be the best brother, be the best friend, be the best husband, be the best father that you can be, so that when you live your life, you're trying to be the best that you could be, not just at baseball, but at life. And I can't tell you how many times in my life I can still see him standing in front of us, and we're on the field, down by home plate, and he's telling that story. And I left that day, and it had a profound effect on me, because, maybe you thought a little bit about teamwork. Maybe you thought a little bit about what you're going to do in life. But what it did for me was say, it's a bigger picture. It's not just the little picture of a job or the little picture of a class or the little picture of a college education. It's what kind of a stamp am I going to put on my life, on the life of the people that are with me, my teammates, my when I get married, my wife and my kids. What kind of an effect am I going to have on them? And it's something, like I said, my mom and dad told me, work hard, have fun, and good things will happen. I think that coalesced all of that talk. For me, it meant a lot. And I think, there is no simple way of being successful. It takes a lot of hard work. And success really means how you feel about yourself more than anything else. Not about what job you get, but the day's over and I look at that friggin' mirror and I say, I did okay today. Or, maybe I was 3 for 4, but that last time up, I gave up the at bat. Or maybe I could have worked a little harder and helped the person at the desk next to me. Or maybe I could have helped that lady who was having trouble with her grocery cart getting out of the supermarket, and I just walk right by her. I mean, not big things, little things. And all of a sudden you begin to think, little things can turn into big things. The big things being how you look at the world, how you look at life, how you look at the people around you. Those are the things that make your life a success. Those are the things that you get gratified with as you grow up, as you begin to experiment with things business-wise, professionally, with your family, with your friends. Those are the things that really, I think, give you the formation of who you're going to be and what you're going to be. So, and I know from what Betsy's told me, you're a pretty special group of people, and I just hope for you, like Bobby Richardson said, there's another Hall of Fame, not just your sports Hall of Fame.
Yes, I have told them, and I have told so many of my friends. I said, this class gives me hope for the future. And I feel good about us down the road because they give me hope for the future. So,
let me say this before you go on, that you guys are pretty fortunate, because in my career, when we started, Betsy mentioned the early days of ESPN. We were one of the forerunners of giving opportunity to female reporters and anchors. There weren't very many of them back in those days. And when I look back on my career and the people that came through there and the people I've worked with, there's nobody that I would put at a level any higher than the person that's running this class. Everybody that you would talk to that worked with her in Cincinnati or at ESPN or wherever her tentacles have gone out to touch, whether it's college or professionally, she cared about doing the job, as I'm talking about, doing your job the right way. She always did her job the right way. And she did it by helping people next to her be the best that they could be. And I think you guys are pretty fortunate to have her. So I don't want to be hammy, but that's the truth, Bets.
Thank you very much. The check will be in the mail. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Want to open it up for questions? Anybody has a question you want to jump in? Cooper, go ahead.
Yeah, George, thank you for taking the time to join us today. And I definitely echo your thoughts that we're very fortunate to have Professor Ross as leading this course. But my question for you is about creating connections that matter. When you said you've talked to a lot of interns, what is something that you recommend as we go into internships or just jobs to create connections that matter, that aren't just surface level, that you're actually getting to know the person you're working with, that not you're working for and help you get a job later down the road, but really to get to know them and create that valuable connection. So what advice do you have when it comes to that?
I think you hit the nail on the head right there. People you're working with. You don't work for somebody, and people don't work for you. You should work for each other. And people have always said to me, I did in doing a ball game. I did the game for I was with the Reds for all told 29 years, 20 years doing all full time, and then I cut back on my schedule and did just part-time games. And I did the games with a guy named Chris Welch, who's a pitcher for the Reds and Montreal, a bunch of other teams. My goal with him, or if I'm doing a football game or a basketball game, I want the person next to me to be put in a position where they look as good as they could possibly look. and they could be as successful as they could possibly be successful. Not, and I'm sure you see it, and Betsy will tell you, I mean, there were days where you'd sit at an anchor desk, not so much at ESPN in the early days, it's more so now. In the early days, we were all pulling the oars in the right direction, but it became competitive. And this is a true story. When I mentioned I did news for a while, and we brought in a co-anchor, and, I mean, you did the news. So they started to split up the co-anchors roles, and the news director called me in one day and just was shaking his head. He said, you're not going to believe this one. But the other anchor came in and said, I'm upset because I've looked at the scripts for this week, and George has had 59% of the stories, and I've only had 41% of the stories. I mean, how can you be thinking that? How can you think that way? That tells you one thing: that person isn't a team player, and that person isn't concerned about what are we doing? Are we doing a good job of covering the news? No, I'm just worried about how much I'm going to be on the air. So, whether you're an intern, whether you're an anchor, whether you're a producer, a director, whether you're a news director, you're in a position where you're in this together. And I think the most joy I've gotten out of the business is when you see people next to you or around you succeed. And I think that's, if you're in a role as an intern, your job is to make whoever you're working with perform at the best of their ability. And anything you can do to help them do that, simple things, not just, important things on paper, but the little simple things. How you help a person on a good day or a bad day. Are you pulling the oars in the same direction? Or when you get to be in a position of leadership, how do you nurture that person? And I think that's it. It does. And I'll tell you this. Bobby Cox was manager of the Atlanta Braves, Toronto Blue Jays, and he was a manager of the Atlanta Braves when they won 14 division championships in a row. He was my first manager in AA baseball when I was broadcasting, and we got to be very good friends. So he's in the middle of winning 14 straight division championships, and he would come to Cincinnati, and we'd always go out to breakfast or, go out and have a drink after a game. And I said, Bobby, how the heck do you keep this thing going? And he said, all I can tell you is you got to find a way to get chemistry in an organization, meaning you got the right people in the right places. And he had chemistry, he had great players on the field, but he also had 3 or 4 guys who were leaders, who set the tone. A manager or a coach can set the rules, but classes, teams, organizations are run by the workers, are run by the people. So you bring leaders in, and they put you in a position to say, if somebody doesn't do something the right way, you take them aside and say, look, we don't do it that way here. The manager doesn't have to do that. So he said the key is get chemistry. Then he said the next key is don't lose that chemistry, because once you've lost it, you don't have a clue how to get it back. So as a leader, a news director, whatever, as an intern, your goal, all of our goals should be, how do we create chemistry? How do we create a belief that you care about me and I care about you? Not that I just care about me or I could care less about you. So more than a specific thing to do, it's a state of mind. What can I do to make our organization better? What can I do to make our product better? And I think if you go in with that philosophy, you're going to be a success, whatever it is, in that internship or later on as a leader or whatever profession you go in. So I think it's more intrinsic than specific. It's a state of mind. And if you have that state of mind, you're going to put yourself in a position to succeed.
Thank you, George. I appreciate the insight.
Yeah.
What are you doing now? You working? Oh.
No, go ahead, George.
Yeah. What was the question? Sorry.
Now, what are you doing now on campus?
Yeah, so I work for, not necessarily on campus, I work for the Indiana High School Athletic Association, and I do
Great.
some sports with them. And then this summer, I'm going to be in Dallas, working with the Dallas Morning News.
That's great. That's good paper.
Yes, I'm looking forward to the opportunity. So
Yeah. A matter of fact, I did a training video for the high school association in Indiana a few years
Oh,
back.
really? That's
For
awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty neat. We brought all the coaches. We went to Indianapolis, and at Victory at the baseball field there.
Yeah,
Victory
Victory
Field.
Field. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it was pretty neat. We had a good time. The guys are great. The leaders there were tremendous.
Yeah, well, when you said Bobby Cox, I first thought of the former commissioner of the IHSA, whose name was also Bobby Cox.
Bobby
So,
Cox, you're right. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and Cooper does a lot with
Brother by another mother.
Cooper does a lot with swimming. He does a lot of play-by-play with swimming. He's a assistant coach, so that's kind of his niche is swimming. So, anybody else with a question?
Professor, I'm sorry, my camera's off. My Wi-Fi in my dorm is like out, so I'm on my phone today. But
That's okay, no
I just
problem.
had yeah, thanks. I just had a quick question about the start of ESPN. I'm just curious about it. Like, from the time of that first show to when ESPN became nationally prominent and Sports Center specifically, right? And it became kind of something like kids like myself growing up watched every morning. How long was that process, and how long were you a part of that all?
I was there for 10 years. I did the first show, and it was a magic carpet ride. The first 4 or 5 years were dramatic. We were like a mom and pop operation. Everybody had a lot of fun, and then just like everything else, the big guys came in, and the networks took over. ABC bought part of ESPN, and they started to bring people in from New York, and things changed a lot in terms of the dynamics. But in terms of recognition, it's really funny. I'll give you two examples. When we started, we started September '79. Now I'm doing baseball at that time, and I'm covering Major League Baseball. And the playoffs that year, the Philadelphia Phillies were in the playoffs. So I'd been working at CBS. I call Larry Shank, who was the PR director for the Philadelphia Phillies. And this is like first week of September. By the way, to add on to my story, after that first weekend, Scotty Connell said to me, he said, George, would you be interested in coming here full time and helping us sign our new anchors? Bring on the anchors aboard. You'll be the senior announcer. We can help, you'll be in charge of the announcers, and little by little, we'll get our team together. So I went back, talked to my wife, Joanne. We talked about it. We decided to give it a shot. I went into the CBS News and Sports director, and I said, Bill, I'd like to get out of my contract. He said, you want to what? I said, I'd like to get out of my contract because I want to go to ESPN. You want to go where? And he said, where is this place? I said, it's up in the woods in Connecticut, and it's all sports. He says, look, you want to leave CBS Sports, which is the #1 sports operation in television, and go up in the woods? He said, I thought you were smarter than that. He said, but look, if you want to do it, go ahead, give it a shot. And for me, I lived in Connecticut, and I was driving back and forth to New York, traveling a lot. For me, it was as much a lifestyle as a professional decision. So he said, go ahead. And when the thing falls flat in its face, give me a call and I'll try to get you a job back here. So that's where we were. So now 2 weeks later, I'm full-time at ESPN. And I called Larry Shank over. I said, his name was Barron. His nickname was Barron. I said, Barron, I need credentials for the playoffs in Philly. He says, okay, George, what is CBS, right? I said, no, it's ESPN. I said, it's what? I said, it's ESPN. He said, George, look, I'll give you the credentials this time, but you got to come up with something better than that next time. They had no idea who we were, what we were. And we laughed about that for years. 20, 30 years later, we said, remember that first phone call? And he did. We go to the first Super Bowl that ESPN covered. It was the Rams and the Steelers at in Los Angeles at Pasadena. And we got the camera, and those are the days where I carried the tape deck and the cameraman carried the camera. It was attached by a cord. So the camera's got a big ESPN on the side. And we're walking through the crowd, and people are coming up. Oh, ESPN, what's that? The Espanol network? They had no idea who we were or what we were. And in those early days, we'd go cover a game. We did 5 football games a weekend. And we had the over here. You see that logo there? That's the original ESPN logo, which I still think was the best logo. We had big signs like that, the cloth signs, and they'd hang them up. The first year, we'd hang up the signs, and the game would be over, and the signs would still be hanging up. After the first year, when we did the NFL draft, we did college basketball, we put up the signs, and everybody stole them. So we knew we arrived when people started to steal the ESPN signs. That's when we started to realize it. But I think the early going, college basketball was big for us that first year in 1980. We started in December of 79. I did the first basketball show with Dick Vitale, Jimmy Valvano, and we had two rotating guys, but Dick Vitale and I still laugh about it. That was before anybody had cell phones. Our office was about as big as this room here, and Dick would come in the morning we had a rotary phone. He would come in the morning, sit by the phone, and from 9 o'clock to 7 o'clock when we went on the air, he'd be on the phone talking to coaches. He's still the same today. He's a remarkable guy, a wonderful guy. Betsy will tell you, he has a heart of gold and is just tremendous. And this is a true story. Dick is blind in one eye. And early in his career, he had his eye was shaded to the side, and people, the first month or two that he went on the air, people were calling in and saying, "Get him off the air. I can't stand looking at him." And he was going to quit. He came in one day and sat in the corner, and he's, him by watching him, he's always positive energy. He was ready to quit. Scotty Connell had to talk him out of it, and eventually went in, had an operation to straighten his eye, which helped. And now you never know it. But the point, he was so hurt that people were worried more about that than what he had to say. And it was, that was the early going when people would call up and you didn't send emails in or whatever. You actually called. It was a remark. I remember that day like it was yesterday, but he's a spectacular guy. But to answer your question, I think when they started to steal the banners, that's when we started to realize we made it. And this is a true story. At that Super Bowl, Pete Rozelle was the commissioner then. We had 2 cameras, but we had only 1 tape deck. So Chet and Scotty and I were sitting and we were looking in the truck looking at the cameras. And he said, "What are you doing with the other camera?" And I said, "We don't have another tape deck." So Chet says, "Look, take the camera, put it in front of the doorway where the NFL owners meet, and just set it up there. So every time they come into their meeting in the conference room, they're going to see the ESPN camera." That's how he's thinking. So we set it up, and midway through the week, Pete Rozelle comes out with Val Pinchback, who was the director of broadcasting for the NFL. And Pete comes up, gives Chet a big hug. "Chet, God, you guys are doing such a great job. ESPN is fantastic. You're doing the football games every weekend. I'm loving it." He said, "But what the heck are you going to do, the rest of the year when football is over?" Because the only contract we had at that time was for 5 football games with the NCAA. We were just getting a deal to do some college basketball games. And Chet said, "Well, funny you mentioned that. We're thinking of doing the NFL draft." And he says that, and Pete Rozelle started to laugh. He says, "You got to be kidding me." He says, "Who's going to want to watch the NFL draft?" And he laughs. And they said a couple of more things, and he had to go to another meeting. He leaves. Val Pinchback was the director of broadcasting. He was standing next to him. Val stays. He says, "Chet, you're serious about that, aren't you?" And Chet says, "Yeah, we are." He said, "Well, let's have a meeting. We'll have a meeting tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. That was the birth of the NFL draft. And as you guys know now, it's become, a cash cow and a really a programming coup that helped ESPN in those early days. So I think college football, college basketball, the NFL draft, and stealing the banners. That's when we began to realize that we were going to make it.
That's pretty great. I'm actually going to the draft tomorrow, so it'll be good. But some great stories. Thank you.
It's pretty neat. I anchored the first 5 NFL drafts, and show you the difference. And we were playing checkers then; they play chess now. We would every Tuesday. I would sit there with all my draft stuff. Every Tuesday from September until April, I spent on the NFL draft, and I had 5x7 cards with all the guys' names on it, what school they were at. Now everything is digital. Boom, you push a button and you got highlights and everything. It was what you knew of all the work you did from September to April. I probably used 10% of it or maybe 8% of it when we got to draft day, but you didn't know what 8% you're going to use. So you did your homework. But it was a joy. It was a lot of fun. We had some great days, some great memories of those draft days. Enjoy the draft. You'll have fun.
Yeah, will do. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And by the way, pay your bill so you get your electricity back there.
Yeah, tell my dorm to do that.
Well, Notre Dame is having its 2-day fundraiser, so maybe we'll raise some money so that we can help Chris get back on Wi-Fi. But George, you need to write a book talking about all this. You need to write a book.
Hey, Chris, let me tell you this one. This is a true story. I played freshman football at USC. The dreaded Cardinal of Gold. I know you guys hate USC, but I'm sad that they weren't able to make a deal to continue that rivalry.
It's USC's fault, by the way.
Pardon?
It's USC's fault, by the way, just to let you know.
No. It's the Irish's fault. Both sides it's both their faults. It should have been done. But freshman year, we're going to Notre Dame. We're undefeated. We're going to Notre Dame to play the Irish. And the first time I ever been to the Golden Dome, it was remarkable. My best friend, we graduated. We played football together and baseball together. He went to Notre Dame. I went to SC. So I always had an affinity, but there was always that battle. So we're leaving Los Angeles. Roger Baldessari was the longtime PR director for the Fighting Irish, and then he became assistant athletic director. Brilliant guy, great guy. Jack Ward is our trainer, and he calls Roger 3 days before we're ready to go and says, "What's the weather going to be like?" And Roger says, "Oh, it's going to be in the 40s and no chance of rain." So Jack doesn't take any of the raincoats for the players to wear, right? So we get there on Friday, and it's raining on Friday. Now this would never happen now. Back then, you just made a phone call. So we play the game, a freshman game, Saturday morning. It's still raining. Now it's about 38 degrees. By the time we hit the field for the varsity game in the afternoon, it's 31 degrees and raining and windy. It was horrible. It was horrendous. Now I just got my little raincoat and I'm standing behind the bench. I'm not, we played our game in the morning and we didn't play it on the big field. We played on a side field. And I was thinking of, coaching at that point in time. When I graduated, I'd probably go into coaching. So I always stood right behind John McKay, who was the coach. Craig Fertig was the assistant coach. And I always want to listen to what they were saying. Back then, you just sat behind the bench and it's raining and you're soaked and the players are sitting on the bench. They don't have anything to cover them. So Roger did a good job, right? So now we're ready for the opening kickoff. Mike Hunter, it's chaos there. There's a guy dressed as a leprechaun running around. Mike Hunter's our kick return guy. He's on the 5-yard line. The field it's wet, it's muddy. John McKay's just sitting there like this. And kickoff comes. Mike Hunter takes it. He takes one step, falls flat in his face into the mud. And they down him there. And McKay goes like this. "Oh my God, somebody shot him."
That's
How chaotic it was. But it was amazing, and we lost the game. I think we were undefeated. We were 3-0 at that point. We lost 24-6, I think it was. But over the years, I became great friends with Eric Parsegian. Um, I did the Walter Camp Football Foundation banquet. I did a number of other NCAA events when I was at ESPN. And when I was there during that era in the '60s, Notre Dame rung up 51 points against SC one day, and then I'm sure you remember there was the other game, the Anthony Davis game, where Notre Dame's ahead by 4 touchdowns in the first half. Anthony Davis gets the second half kickoff, runs it back. SC comes back, scores 24 points in the second half, and wins the game. And Aaron and I became close friends. A wonderful human being, a great guy, wonderful coach, but a great guy. And every time I'd see him, I had to go in and interview him after the game. And then every time I'd see him, we'd be at a banquet, and I'd be walking up. He goes, "Oh boy, here comes the Trojan horse running again." He'd laugh about it, but he was so good at deflecting what was a very difficult time for him. But he was spectacular. We joked about it all the time. He always brought up the 51 points, and I'd bring up in the Anthony Davis second half. But a lot of great memories, and I think it's from a football standpoint, it's the best rivalry in college football, and I hope they'll be able to get it back together again. It was spectacular for fans. I still have my friends still go there. Every year, if it's at Notre Dame, I've got a dozen friends that go there for that, and the same thing when they go to LA. So hopefully we can get it back together because it's a great rivalry.
Yeah,
great rivalry.
And I think they will.
Yeah.
The cooler heads will
Money.
prevail, and I think it'll come. Yeah, absolutely. Isn't it always? So, got time for one more question. If somebody wants to jump in. You got Molly. Go ahead.
George, thank you so much for being with us today. This has been so great. Chris and I are actually heading to the draft together, and we're going to be in the media workroom. So I'm just curious in a big event like that, how to really take advantage of the opportunity and, get all the content we can get, but also just kind of like any big opportunity like that. What's your advice to really embrace the moment and take the most out of it?
Okay, before you go there, go online and find out who the PR people are with the NFL and what their names are, get their pictures. And when you get there, identify them, because they're more than likely the people that are going to give you an opportunity to get a job later on or to make a contact later on. And why do I say that? Because when we started the NFL draft and I was anchoring it, they had a PR guy who kind of ran around and would bring athletes over to interview or whatever. His name was Roger Goodell. So, so you never know. You never know. So those are the guys that usually, like Betsy said, the business is run by salespeople, and it's not the former football players. Then, you'll meet some former football players too, but take a little time. Both of you and Chris sit down and go online and find out who the guys are. And then and the girls too, both, and find out, because they're the ones that will climb the ladder little by little. And they're usually pretty good people too. So many of those people from those early days are still friends of mine. And you kind of kid about it. George Bodenheimer, the guy who became president at ESPN, he started in the mailroom at ESPN in 1981, and he later became the president. He rose through the ranks to be there. And this is a true story. We would have a meeting every Monday with Chet Simmons and Scotty Connell, all the department heads, and each one of it, he would say, "Okay, let's go around the room. Tell us about the young people that you have that are coming along." And we get to Bob Polito, who ran the tape library where George Bodenheimer worked, and he said, "Bob, who do you have?" He says, "I got this one guy who's great. He's a good worker. He's intelligent. He helps everybody around him. He's really ready for another challenge." And Scotty kind of looks at me and he says, "Do you think he's ready for the big challenge?" And I said, "I don't know. Ask Bob." He says, "Bob, do you think he's ready for the biggest challenge we can give him?" And he says, "Yeah, I think he's ready." So they put George Bodenheimer on the job of picking up Dick Vitale at the airport every time he flew in, and stayed with him, brought him to the hotel, then picked him up, brought him to ESPN, and spent all day long with him, because Dick he'd be talking, he'd talk your ear off. So this was the big challenge. And lo and behold, number one, he did a great job, and they have become the best of friends. So you never know, so yeah, do a little homework before you get in there, and then keep your eyes open and help any way you can help. If they, they'll remember you guys if you do a good job. If you don't do a good job, they won't. But if you do a good job, they'll remember, and you never know, get their name, write it down, and maybe send them an email or send them a note. We all communicate with texts and emails. I still send a written note to people who do something really nice. And believe me, nobody does that anymore. So don't feel funny about doing that. They'll remember that. But have fun. And the food's pretty good, so enjoy the food back there.
Thank you. I will. Thank you so much. That's really great
All right.
advice. I'll keep my appetite open.
Have fun.
Yeah, some good thoughts there. And I know that Dickie V needs our thoughts and prayers right now. He's going through a little tough time. So, I hope all the best for him, because nobody has worked harder to raise money for cancer research, especially pediatrics. So yeah, that's some good thoughts.
I texted him last week.
Oh, did you?
Word came out. I said, V, I said, cancer is tough, but you're tougher. Yeah. And he sent me back, my paisan, thank you.
Yeah, he is. He and I always used to make Notre Dame jokes when we were on the set together, because we said that we wouldn't get any mail if it weren't for Notre Dame, because he used to have a scholarship for the Leprechaun, I know, and then I think he had a granddaughter who played tennis. But yeah, we said if we didn't get solicitation from Notre Dame, we wouldn't get any mail at all. So well, George, as we
went to Bollettieri's camp in Bradenton and then went to Notre Dame.
Yeah.
She was good.
Yeah, exactly. So as we wrap it up, I know, George, you've given us so much good advice for the students, but I think his Wi-Fi went out too. George, if you're still with us, we don't see you, but I hope you can hear us. If you have any words of advice, any way to wrap it up this last hour, and just some thoughts and good advice for the students before we close it out.
Just like I said, work hard, have fun, good things will happen. Make everybody around you better, and you'll be better at the same time. Enjoy it, and enjoy the magic carpet ride. I'm sure, just by sensing, the folks that I've talked to this morning and seeing your attitude, you guys are going to be fine. You'll be fine. Whatever it is, whether it's in broadcasting or journalism or whatever it is, just have fun. Have fun.
Yeah, that is the most important thing. So, George, so grateful that you were able to join us this morning. Thank you so much for your time and your stories and your great expertise. And yes, I'm serious. You do need to write a book of all these stories that you have. That's for sure. Class, thank you for being with us. Enjoy the weekend. We will be back in class on Monday to wrap up the semester. George, all the best. Hope you get back to Cincinnati soon.
Yeah, in fact, I'm coming next week. We're going to christen a plaque in honor of Jesse Jackson next Friday. So I'll be in next Friday at the ballpark.
Oh, that's great. That is terrific. Well, enjoy it. I hope I get to run into you while you're back here in town. So thanks again. Appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
My pleasure.
Take care
now. See
you soon. Bye-bye.
Good luck, gang.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, George.